Grace and peace be unto you from our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. You know, I consider it an incredible gift that I have had good mentors in ministry. I've been surrounded by veteran pastors who have cheered me on and really helped me to grow as a pastor. Certainly in the last several years I've been blessed by having Pastor Ted around. But before that I had Bishop Howard McCarney, served in the church I came from. And certainly I don't want to forget two people who have played a key role in my life are my father-in-law, Pastor Fritz Foltz, and his partner in ministry, Pastor Ed Kaiser, who were co-pastors together for 35 years in Gettysburg. And I was up in Gettysburg yesterday with a lot of the people from that church at another event, and was just kind of reminiscing. But these two gentlemen retired quite a few years ago now. And what I remember is on their final Sunday, there was an event during the Sunday school hour where they brought in a group called the Popcorn Hat Players, which was a kids theater group out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, kind of real close to where I used to live. And they put on this two-person show. And one of them real quickly put on a beard, introduced himself as Noah. And Noah began to build an ark. The other guy's name was Ed. And when Ed's listening, hearing about Noah's plans to build this ark and starts to see Noah building this ark, he just starts to poke fun at Noah, whooping and hollering and being really obnoxious and saying, "This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous." And Noah goes on to say, well, I'm going to teach you guys about some of the parables, the stories Jesus told. And that's what he went about doing. And there was this, first one was this comical version of the Good Samaritan. And when it ended, Ed, of course, comes out and heckles Noah, calling him a bozo, calling the Samaritan a bozo. And then they moved on to the next parable, the prodigal son. At the end of this, of course, Ed comes out and heckles him, saying, look at that pig food. He deserves pig food. And they move on. 3 more stories. Each time Ed comes out and heckles Noah, saying, what a jerk you are, Noah. And at the end of all this, Noah comes out and announces, the ark is done. The ark is done. And with that, Ed starts begging for a chance on the boat. I want to go on the boat. I'm sorry I made fun of you. This boat's great. Let me on the boat. And then these characters up front look at all the kids, look at all the people who have gathered and say, you get a chance to pick the ending. You can let Ed on the boat or you can make him swim. So they say, well, clap your hands if you think we should let Ed on the boat. And there's some good applause. Good applause. And then who thinks we should let Ed swim? And it's, woo! Swim, swim, swim. And I think Matt Pensinger was one of the people announcing, swim, swim, swim. But Noah sort of says, are you sure about this? He looks back toward the parents in the back, says, let's give Ed a chance to apologize, then we'll take another vote. And So, Ed apologizes, gives this profound apology, says, you are just a master craftsman. This boat is spectacular. And it goes on for a couple minutes. This grand apology is sincere from the heart. And then at the end, Noah says, who thinks Ed should get on the boat? And all the parents in the back, of course, join in. It's really, really loud, grand applause. And then who thinks we should make Ed swim? And there's a standing ovation, and they clap and cheer, swim, swim, swim. And with that, of course, the decision was made. Ed swims. Ed has to fend for himself. And I laughed. The actors laughed. It was comical and innocent, but as I remembered it, I remember thinking, we all should really know better than this. The followers of Jesus do not let the people around us fend for themselves, do we? In many ways, you and I live in a sink or swim culture, which really is not always the kindest place. I have to wonder how many of us who are gathered here today are feeling a bit like Ed at times, like we're alone or without much help in this world. I wonder how many of us feel like it's a dog-eat-dog world where we must look out for ourselves first and foremost because the people around us are not looking out for us. I wonder how many of us inside have these deep-seated hungers, spiritually and emotionally, that are simply not being met. Maybe we feel like there's nowhere to turn, or maybe we feel like we've been turned away by people who really should know better. But you and I know that when you live in such a culture as that, you are always yearning for something better. You're always yearning for an alternative witness for someone or from some group, a group of people who model hope and mercy and something else from what you're seeing. Biblical times, we're certainly a dog-eat-dog world, a sink-or-swim culture. All you have to do is turn to that lesson I read a couple minutes ago. And in a sense, sink or swim is really what Jesus' disciples were asking Jesus to do. Let this crowd that's gathered fend for themselves. In that story, we remember a huge crowd had gathered on the seashore. Jesus went ashore. He healed many people, probably spent some time teaching there. It got late. The disciples ordered Jesus around and say, let everyone go. Let everyone in this crowd go away and find food for themselves somewhere else, but not here. And just pause and play with that troubling image a bit. It's an incredible irony, but you have this massive group of hungry people. They need to be fed. They're with Jesus. They're with the followers of Jesus, and followers of Jesus want them sent away to be fed somewhere else, to be nurtured somewhere else. They seem to be content to let the masses go elsewhere to be cared for. That, to me, is one of the most troubling and haunting images, and it should haunt the church of this 21st century because there are tremendous crowds in this culture with great hunger, and the church is too often content to just wait and see if people show up on Sunday morning to be fed by themselves. By and large, so many in this culture go elsewhere if we're really honest about it. Great crowds all around us in this sink or swim culture are continually looking for something elsewhere. They are planning their next getaway that they think will solve their problems or will give them a needed respite from their day-to-day. There are many great crowds who are continually just looking at screens and images and amusing themselves. There are many that are turning to shopping as a means for escape. There are many who turn to the party life. There are simply many who amuse themselves day in and day out, all day, on social media or video games. But the hungers in all of us persist. We have to remember, people are looking. They're hungry. And we can say, as many do, it's up to people to come to Jesus on their own or come to church on their own. It's not up to us. And to this, remember, Jesus speaks. Jesus looked at the crowd in his time. He looks at the masses all around us, and I believe he says the same thing to us he said to those disciples. Do not send hungry people away. What he says to us, the people of Good Shepherd, is be intentional, be proactive, go and feed the people of Montgomery County. And what we come to see is that the crowd in every story becomes an incredible gift because it reminds us and helps us rediscover who we are. Because we don't always think we can help, but neither did those first disciples of Jesus. When Jesus said, feed the crowd of 5,000, remember what their first reaction was. We have nothing but okay, just making sure you're with me. 5 loaves and 2 fish. We have nothing but. It's what a lot of us say. We have nothing but. It's sort of saying we can't do enough. But we look at the complex issues of this day and we're often baffled. We often feel like we have very, very little to offer. Many, many people can easily become cynical. But remember what Jesus says. Bring what you have. Bring it to me. Bring it here to me quickly, with force, with momentum. Many will think that's not very much, but we can't forget that in that story today, they gave him literally everything they had at that moment in time. They gave 100%. They may have been not knowing what was going to happen, but they brought it all forward. They gave it to Jesus. When you put something in the hands of Jesus, what he does is he blesses it, he hands it back to them, and then he tells them, go and be my distributors. And then it's just a wonderful thing that happens. Those who doubted they could take care of the hunger of the masses, they were able to, very much so. They were able to take care of that whole crowd, and it says they gained more than they started with in this process of giving. And isn't that the beauty of giving in this world, is that the more you give, ultimately you realize you receive so much more in return. That is a pattern that we need to keep reminding ourselves of over and over and over and over again. You and I gather for worship with 100% to give. We all have a 5-loaf and 2-fish gift to offer to God and to this hungry world. And when we indeed have the courage to share that, and share that in the midst of other people who are doing the same thing, you realize Jesus is always going to provide in abundance. When we share it, we move beyond our doubts and begin to see ourselves as doing God's work in our daily life. In worship, Jesus is saying, come to me, let me bless you, and then send you out to feed the hungry world all around you. And what Jesus is saying is, you can do it. Go out, empty yourself in this world around you, and then come back and be filled up again. When we return to worship to be filled up, we're blessed again and then sent out again, over and over and over, emptying ourselves, returning to be filled up. Closing thing, one of the images to keep in mind is what Jesus did in the story. Remember what he said to this massive crowd right after he had this gift put in his hand? He said, tell the massive crowd to sit down, to recline. The image of reclining is what you do at a banquet, a joyous festival, a joyous party. What Jesus is saying is, get this crowd ready because help is on the way. God's people are going to be out ready to serve. Ultimately, this day and age, I think what Jesus is saying to the crowd today is, get ready. Because the people of God are ready to give. They're ready to give their 5 loaves and 2 fish. In the days to come, let us build momentum because the world around us really needs our witness. Amen.